Hi, I'm Olga with Golovka Homes, and welcome to our 2024 Winter Market Update and Forecast. Now, as we start this conversation, what we want to do is take a look back at 2023, and what really set the stage for the real estate market is what happened in 2022. As we know, as we were coming out of COVID, the Federal Reserve printed money and everybody got a lot of checks in the mail around US, and we had all kinds of supply chain issues. And that caused inflation to get out of control. And what that ended up precipitating was the Federal Reserve had to make some aggressive moves in 2022 and significantly increased interest rates. In fact, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate more than doubled in 2022. And in 2023, it wasn't much better. We started the year with 6.5%, and rates climbed to almost 8% by Q3, the end of the third quarter. So what that did is it put a chilling effect on the real estate market. So much so that what we see in the numbers is we saw 24% fewer homes sell around the Bay Area. What we knew for sure is that buyers could not afford these high interest rates, so it would make sense that not as many buyers would be purchasing. But what we didn't fully anticipate is how much the move in interest rate would convince sellers not to put their homes on the market. In fact, this is looking at the last 5 years of new listings in the area. And the up and down that you see in the curve is what we call market seasonality. As more sellers put their homes on the market in spring and summer, and that inventory or new homes wind down near the end of the year. The right far side of the graph over here is 2023. And as you can see, we never really got that nice bump in inventory. So effectively what that meant is the number of new homes for sale was down 25%. Now, was the number of homes sold down 24% and the number of new listings coming to the market down 25%, you might think with a slowing year in real estate that prices would go down as well. But that is not what happened. Not what actually happened. And the median price of homes sold around the area went up 6.9% in 2023. Why? Well, we simply still had more buyers than sellers. Although we had fewer sellers selling, we had fewer buyers buying, and we still had more demand than supply. Now, where the slowdown did show up was the pace of the market, how long it took to sell homes. And the market slowed down by about 10%. So effectively, where does that leave us at the end of the year? We're really looking at a balanced market at the end of 2023 as we wound down the year to a close, and that really shows up in what's happening with prices. At the end of the year, this is looking at the median prices in Bay Area going from 2018 all the way to 2023. And as you can see on the right side of the graph over here, the last couple of months of the year, prices are leveling off. Again, indicating that we're at a somewhat of a balanced market. So where are things headed in 2024? Well, let's take a look. With all that's happening, we do have a large group of sellers that want to sell but simply can't. Why are those homeowners feeling stuck? Well, this graph tells the story. What it's telling us is that 70% of people who own a home have a mortgage rate of 4% or less. What that has caused is a large number of people to really have second thoughts or reconsider, selling. And what we call it in the business is a lock-in effect. So people are effectively locked into their low interest rates, and they're really, really thinking twice about moving. In fact, if we look at this graph, the dark cherry red portion over here are people who have an interest rate of 3% or less. And they're absolutely not selling. I mean, you could put yourself in their shoes, or maybe you've got a mortgage at 3% or below at the moment. And when you're thinking about buying a new home and taking on a 6 or 7% mortgage, you're definitely not wanting to double your monthly payment. Now, the people who are in this section over here, who have an interest rate of between 3 and 4%, you know, they have to think they're probably not selling. The people who have an interest rate of about 5%, the orange group over here, they have to think hard before selling. Now, people in the blue, if you've got an interest rate between 5 and 6%, and the prevailing interest rates are 6, 7%, you are probably going to get moved. It's not that much of a difference in jumping from a 5% mortgage to a 7% mortgage as far as monthly payments are concerned. So and, you know, people who have an interest rate of above 6%, they're definitely moving. It's not a question for them. So this has effectively caused 25% fewer sellers to enter the market in the last year. And now this lock-in effect caused buyers and sellers to move to the sidelines. So effectively, we have a lot of pent-up demand. There's still a lot of people who want to move, and either they can't afford to move, or they just can't bring themselves to paying that much more on the mortgage for a new home. So as soon as rates come down to a significant, by significant margin, we will see a surge in buying and selling. Now, what do rates need to be for buyers and sellers to get off the fence? Well, that number is 6%. How do we know that? Well, the largest number of sales that occurred in 2023 in the US were actually new construction. These home builders have bought up land, they built out their homes, and they had a finished product in 23, and they had to sell those homes whether or not mortgage rates were 8% or something else. So what they ended up doing is having to buy down the mortgage rate for the buyers to make it more affordable to them. And what we ended up seeing is once that rate, that buy down rate, got to 6%, that's when buyers moved off the fence and became active buyers. So then let's look at what is in the forecast for 2024 mortgage rates. Well, what we know is as they started this conversation, the Fed was increasing interest rates because of inflation. And the graph you see here is showing what's happening with inflation going back to 2020. And when we had COVID, inflation really wasn't a concern. It was really low. But after we printed all that money and we had supply chain issues, we saw inflation really, really get out of control. And by the second quarter of 2022, that inflation rate got to 8.3%. And that's when the Federal Reserve said, hey, we have to do something about it. And they dramatically increased interest rates. Now, the good news is the Fed's policy of increasing interest rates had started to curb inflation. In fact, you could see the trend from Q3 2022. What's happened with inflation in this last year and a half has, it has come down at the end of Q4 2023. And as we recorded 2023, the annualized inflation rate is down to 3.2%. So what does it mean for interest rates? Let's take a look at the same time horizon we just looked at. And with interest rates in 2020, we had about 3.75%. In 2021, they went down even further to 2.65%. Now, if you bought a home or refinanced at the time, you probably got a mortgage of 3% or under. And in 2022, as we started the year, rates went to 3.2%, and this last year was when we saw the worst of it, with rates climbing as high as 8%. So what's ahead for 2024? Well, because we're seeing inflation curbing substantially, the forecast is we will see rates drop down to 5.75%. Now, that's below that critical 6% level number. And in 2025, the year to follow, we might see rates go down as low as 5%. Now, if you're holding out for another, for a period of time where you might think we could see another 3% interest rate, all the financial forecasters are saying that rates were artificially low in 2020 and 2021, and that we're probably not going to see the 3 and 4% rate back. So how does this decrease in interest rates affect real estate transactions? Well, as you could see in 2020, at a US level, we had 5.6 million transactions. And in 2021, that number grew to 6.1 million. And that was the busiest year on record for real estate. In 2022, when rates started to climb, the number of home sales went down. And in 2023, again, we saw the number of home sales drop 24%. But when we get rates below this critical 6% interest rate number, we're going to see an uptick or an uplift, near 20% increase in the number of home sales. So what are the 5 factors that are going to drive the market in 2024? Well, here's what we have. Number 1, interest rates will decrease as inflation comes down. Number 2 is the stock market will rise. When we see interest rates come down, companies borrow more money to grow their business, the economy expands, and the stock market rises. We also have an election year on the horizon here in the US, which is usually favorable for both interest rates and the stock market. So our demand will increase as these interest rates come down. Buyers will move off the sidelines. And supply will increase as more people put their homes on the market. So what do you think is going to happen to prices? Well, we're forecasting the prices will rise 4 to 6% as demand will exceed supply in 2024. So that's our forecast is going to be driving the market. And so what should you do? Well, keep an eye on the news for when interest rates will go below 6%, because that's when the market will take off. In fact, this is what it's going to look like for buyers. Okay, so the biggest thing that you can do is get prepared. The most frequent question I get is, should we wait for rates to come down before buying? And in order to answer that question, I want to explain to you what happens when interest rates go down. And when rates go down, mortgage, the monthly mortgage payment becomes more affordable. And that causes mortgage applications and the number of buyers to come back into the market. Now, supply goes down because we have all of these buyers buying up all of these houses, which causes the third thing, which is prices will rise as demand exceeds supply. Buyers compete and face multiple offers. So to answer that question of should we wait for rates to come down before we buy, I simply want to come back and ask you the question. If you're considering buying, would it be easier for you to buy now when there's more selection, less competition, and simply refinance later when rates trickle down? Or would it be easier to wait for those rates to come down and get in the market in the springtime when buyers are back, inventory is low and competition is fierce and prices are rising? Well, that leads us to our tip with expert advice. And that advice is you should be buying before the frenzy and then simply refinancing when rates come down. Ultimately, you need to be prepared to win in this market. And well, what does that look like? Well, first and foremost, you need to get pre-approved. And the pre-approval is typically good for 90 days, 120 days, but 30 of those you need to actually transact for real estate transactions, so 90 shopping days. So if you're considering buying in 2024, the earlier you get in the market, the better price you will get on the home. And if interest rates aren't exactly what you want them to be and they're trending down, it's going to be easier to get that home and refinance later than buying when the market is at the fever pitch. The second thing you want to do is if you're a seller considering moving up, Get your home ready for the market. If you would like some guidance on things to do, or preparing your home, reach out and I will share a complimentary preparation of upgrades analysis, and I will literally show you what you can do to get the most bang for your buck. I hope you enjoyed this market update. I'm here to help you make a better life through real estate. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.